In sociology, for my spring semester, I learned about many different topics. Some of my favorite topics were um, crime and deviance, gender and sex, as, as it relates biologically and as a social construct, and how society develops overall. Um, So, no, what I found interesting about crime and deviance is I didn't think that crime and deviance really had a place in society before. I thought it was one of those things that was just one of those moral flaws that serves no purpose other than to prove that we as humans are imperfect and, well, evil in some ways, but also like good. So I thought of it more as a spiritual kind of thing. But as we learned about the different theories, such as conflict theory, there is reasons for why there is deviance and why there is crime. For one thing, a functionalist might argue that crime actually is the reason we have law enforcement and we have judges and we have a whole criminal justice system. Heck, you could even say it's the reason we have these TV shows like Criminal Minds and Law and Order. And there's a ton of shows like that have been on for years. And without there being crime in the real world, we would never have these shows, as well as never have all these jobs that are created through crime. Deviance, however, is different. One of the very interesting things is that deviance is not actually a bad thing. It's just something different. It's kind of like dyeing your hair rainbow or any color that's not like a regular color. It's not necessarily bad or evil, it's just different. It's abnormal. It's from the social norm. And social norms are actually a construct that really are made to just control the masses. However, if you're a deviant individual, you don't follow social norms. One of the things that may be deviant in some cultures may not be deviant in others, such as body modifications. Um, not only not only is deviance not evil, but it serves as a purpose. It's a way of rebellion, something that Karl Marx would certainly look towards as a positive thing because he believed in the fact that the worker would one day uprise and they will decide how society will go. However, when you're deviant, you are essentially going against the man, basically what Karl Marx fought for. I lean, but I digress. Another really important part is the fact that just had a mind blank. Did crime and deviant? Oh, about gender and sex. So in the unisex bathroom in the building that I frequent a lot, there is a question written on the wall that asks, is gender and sex the same thing? And somebody wrote the answer is yes, of course. And I kind of wondered about that, but I was a little bit afraid to ask. In reality, the significance between gender and sex being different is a lot bigger than I thought. I never really thought of being transgender as an issue. It was kind of something that just felt like it appeared out of nowhere, and I didn't really care about whatever people were doing with their lives so long as it didn't hurt others. So I kind of brushed it off, but now I understand what it means when people are talking about that they have gender dysphoria and being transsexual, transgender, metrosexual, and the fact that gender is not this boy or girl thing, it is this range, and a big part of that is the genderbread man, which was like a gingerbread man, but it had to talk about gender and gender identity and gender expression. And these are all terms that are considered super liberal, but in reality, they're a part of everyday lives. I have friends who are very, who who aren't described as very feminine, but are still females. I have transgender friends, who even before they started transitioning, didn't always ascribe to be yeah, the normal gender. And I think it's important as a society that we evolve past this whole you have to be a man and you have to be a woman, and really take it for what it is that you should be an individual in who you are, and your gender and your sex doesn't decide anything. But I didn't know that hermaphrodites really existed either, which was kind of crazy because all this time I thought hermaphrodites were like mermaids. Like only mermaids were hermaphrodites. It was just something that I read when I was a kid. The last thing, but one of the most important things, was definitely how we learned about how society changes over time and really grows. Everything from like micro things such as symbolic interactionism, all the way to the macro, where it's the entire world and what social problems there are. Everything from famine, oppression, war, slavery, poverty, these things that really need to be solved. But granted, I certainly don't have the answer, and there's probably somebody who may have the answer, but I don't know where they are. Society develops all the way from hunter and gatherer society all the way through the modern day society where we are consumerism and we're so involved with ourselves now. But we had to go through the industrial age, we had to go through the technology age, we had to go through civil rights, and there's countries that right now simply cannot handle democracy. And I think that's something America as a country needs to understand, because all this time when you grow up in America, you're kind of raised to think that there's only one way to be right, and that's to be like America. But if every country was like America, the world would be absolutely chaotic. And also, America is not the best, despite what we may think. I mean, I'm not going to say that on my Facebook because I may want a government job one day, but I definitely know that there are a lot of Nordic countries and countries that are in the EU that are doing way better than us. Granted, I don't know if I'll fit in because I can only speak English and Spanish, but I definitely know that it will take time because countries have to go through their phases. It's kind of like going through your bratty teenage years and your cringy middle school years. Your cringy middle school years are actually, though, like in the Industrial Revolution and reverting from agricultural society into more modern society, and also understanding how to have, like, democratic voting and not elections based around scare tactics. But it's also that communism and socialism is not a bad word. I mean, I knew socialism wasn't a bad word, but I didn't quite understand why communism was a bad word, because I actually kind of like Karl Marx, but don't tell the government I said that. So, America right now is still a young nation, and it is hard to think that we can lead the world when we're still so young. But the older nations, such as Finland and other European Nordic countries, but there's other than Finland, Switzerland, the ones that are the happiest, the wealthiest, have the best healthcare in the world. These are the countries you should aspire to be like. Granted, there's not as diverse society, there's not as diverse in nationality and races, but the point is we should really follow their lead. But America is still the loud teenager banging pots and pans and wants attention. And America's place in the world will change over time. But it showed me now that America is not the best. In fact, there's a lot to be envied. But it also shows me that there is progress, and everyone has to go through progress. Every place from the Congo to the United States to Finland. But communism has to fall, and it's going to fail. And that's one of the interesting things, too, is because I always thought communism could really work. It just wasn't working out because somebody fucked it up. Like, this would have worked had you not set fire to it, but that's not really what happens. Communism, in fact, can only really become a stable thing once it falls and becomes socialism. So Bernie Sanders actually has a really good point, and that might have been why he was so popular, and why millennials are starting to feel like things like college should be free. Granted, if college was free, I don't think the professors would be paid at all. So there's that issue. But that's a whole nother thing that has to do with education. America has to value education the way other countries do. And that's also an interesting point as well. But everything from the littlest things, from crime and deviance to gender, to what makes the world the way it is, are all important parts of sociology, and they reflect every day in our lives. Granted, my little microcosm of my world that I live in is nowhere near as diverse as it could be, but I can definitely see my sociological perspective showing. Although I may need to stop leaning so heavily into Karl Marx conflict theory. It might be getting a little weird now. That's it. Bye.